All right, welcome everyone to the Tellor Tech Call, August 18th. So today should be a fun one. I'm going to be going over inflationary rewards, kind of in the Tellor system, but also just in general. So before that, some quick announcements. First, big announcement, new t-shirts. Mike's got one, he can model it. Very comfortable. We didn't order too many at the moment, but we will be. We'll probably order some more and get them out to you guys. So do good things for the community, and we'll get you a T-shirt. So we're trying to think about good Tellor merch ideas. So if you have awesome ideas for Tellor merch, feel free to just sell them. Like we'll buy them too, but we'll also be creating them. That's good. On to the real announcements. Tellor V2, the audit is done. Big congrats. Thanks to everybody who's helped with that. So we just got sign off that the audit is done, but the public report is still being created. They said it should be done by the end of the week. We'll get it to you guys as soon as we have it. So, but that said, we're ready to sort of move on with Tellor V2. So the timeline's going to be relatively quick. What we're going to be doing is in 1 week, we will be upgrading the Rinkeby contracts. And then we'll be testing on Rinkeby. We'll test all of the IDs, make sure everything works, make sure it's going smooth. And then we'll push it to mainnet probably in about 3 weeks from today. So 2 weeks after the Rinkeby one. So in 3 weeks, we should be on V2. If you are a holder of Tellor tokens, there is no change. There's not like a migration or anything like that. You don't have to do anything. Even if you're a user of Tellor contracts, you'll just notice things should be a little bit faster. You shouldn't notice any change. So don't really worry. The only people who actually have to worry about anything are the miners. So there is a miner upgrade. We pushed out, there is a pre-release currently on GitHub. So if you're a Rinkeby miner, you can go and come test that out with us. You'll just be calling a different function in the Solidity contracts. Relatively simple upgrade, but we want to make sure that we get it right to make sure you guys don't miss out on any rewards. That said, if you want to start mining, if you guys know one of the big changes is that miners will only be able to submit 1 value per hour, and this is going to hopefully decentralize the mining a little bit more. So we need a lot more miners in the system. So even if you're a smaller miner and want to get on board, it could be a time to do that, even if you can't compete at like the FPGA hashes that are out there now. If you're a miner, make sure you're paying attention. I don't want anybody to sort of miss out on rewards. Also, great job guys last week. So if you guys know, we did a small miner upgrade last week. We added 2 new PSRs. We added the off shift price, and then we also added the BTC dominance value. So there's some cool contracts that are going to be using these, and happy to kind of share them once they're live. And we added those relatively fast. It was like within a week we made a pull request, and I think it's gonna really differentiate Tellor if we can add prices quickly for people, because a lot of times parties, they don't want to miss out on some DeFi craze and they need some specific price. So if we can continue to add these for people, it makes a big difference. Okay. So any other announcements? Oh, well, this Friday there is a conference, or it's this whole weekend. We'll be sending it out, but it's a crypto conference, and I'll be speaking at it.
I just tweeted it earlier today.
And I'll be speaking on Sunday. And today I'm going to basically be giving you guys a draft of the speech that I'm going to be giving there. The speech there is going to be a lot shorter and hopefully a little bit more polished in the PowerPoint. But you guys get to be my test audience. And also, I want to interact with you guys while I do this speech, just because, let me know what you guys want to hear more about and where I can sort of make it clear. So if all you wanted were updates, that is it. So I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get started. Okay, can you guys see the PowerPoint? Give me a thumbs up. Mike, I'm guessing you can see the PowerPoint. Man. Okay. People can see it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about inflationary rewards and proof of work systems, mainly inflationary rewards in general. And I want to keep it sort of high level economics for you guys, because this is one of my favorite pieces of crypto at the moment. The idea that you can print money and put it towards something is like the greatest idea ever. And it's sort of revolutionizing the space. So I'm going to skip over the Tellor intro because you guys know all about Tellor. So tokenomics, this is sort of an awful term. The general idea is that you create incentives, you punish people, you have all of these different features that are built into your token model, and it's supposed to drive the value of the token. But I think rather than just driving the value of the token, kind of a cooler model to actually have is, okay, so what can you do to actually change people's behavior? What can you structure differently to cause people to act in a certain way? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because the fact that you can change people's behavior is more exciting than whether or not you can add value to a token. So the first question, what is inflation? So for those of you that actually don't know, so the inflation actually has nothing to do with the supply of money. In economics, at least nowadays, inflation means how much the price level increases. So if housing and the cost of clothes and the price of oil and all of that is going up, you have inflation in your economy. There's a lot of reasons you can have inflation in your economy, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with the money supply. Whenever we, in the crypto space, talk about inflationary currencies or deflationary currencies, what we usually mean is we're talking about the supply growth rate. So, if you think about, what's an example of a fixed? Chainlink, I guess, would they have a fixed supply. So they would be a deflationary currency, because if people are using Chainlink more, then the currency will go up in value. Whereas, say, a currency like Ethereum, which prints money, and like Tellor, you print new currencies. This would be what some people refer to as like an inflationary currency, one where you're naturally going to see prices increase. So if you want to think how printing money can cause inflation, you have to think about the number of goods. So if you have 10 cars and you have $10 then in your economy, then each car will be $1. If you print more money, so say $20, now each car is going to cost $2. It's just sort of division in math. But there's obviously that's like a super simple example. It doesn't necessarily work like that all the time, because there's different things such as the velocity of money, so how often money is changing hands, and then also future expectations of money. If you think you're going to get a whole lot of money in the future, you're probably more okay spending more money now, and prices can go up just if people are expecting more money, because then it increases money velocity. But in general, most economists like to think that if you print money, you get inflation, all else equal. But that's what we're going to talk about today. All else is not equal. Things change, you change people's behavior. So the next term that you guys need to know, this is the last of the terms, I promise, is seigniorage. So for those not in the economic space, seigniorage is the value you'll get when printing money. I know a lot of you think, well, don't you always get money whenever you print money? It's actually a term that comes from back in the day whenever people were issuing coins. So if you had, a gold coin, you were minting a new gold coin. If you minted a gold coin that was worth $100, but it cost you $80 to buy that gold, the seigniorage was only $20. An example of currencies in the crypto space, so like Tether actually has no seigniorage, theoretically. So like Tether, if you have, theoretically, Tellor is backed by $1. So Tellor will put $1 in the bank, and then Tether will issue a USDT coin. So they actually didn't make any money on that. So there was no seigniorage. Of course, if Tellor was only putting 50 cents in the bank, now they have 50 cents of seigniorage. And what you do, how you have a currency with seigniorage, and what you do with that newly, freshly printed money, that all changes the incentives, and that's how you change people's behavior in your system. So I'm sure many of you are Bitcoin maximalists. I'm joking. But why would you want to devalue money? So why did we ever move off of, say, the gold standard? And why do you want to be able to print money? There's this idea of a deflationary spiral. So if you assume that your currency, so say your Bitcoin, is going to be worth more in the future. So say you're buying a pizza and you can spend it now and buy it with Bitcoin, or you can hold on to your Bitcoin and you're going to be able to buy more pizzas in the future. And then what actually happens is that then demand goes down. So people are less willing to spend their money, and then prices go down, meaning if prices go down, the value of your Bitcoin goes up. And now the value of Bitcoin's going up, so it's going up even more. So why not just hold it longer? And it leads to this cycle of everyone just wanting to hold the more valuable thing. And you want to break that. So if for instance, in Bitcoin, you want people to actually spend the currency, you want it to not be a store of value as much. You want, if you're holding the money for a long period of time, you want it to actually be penalized. You want people to be spending it a lot. You want people to spend your currency, not just sit and hold it. Because if people are outspending it, then it boosts the economy, it gets things moving. So that's why maybe an inflation rate is good. You obviously don't want to inflate so much that nobody's willing to even take your currency. That's the downfall, Weimar Republic types, where, nobody wants to even touch your currency because it's not going to be worth anything by the time they get to the bank. But for the most part, cryptocurrencies tend to go up in value, and it leads to a problem where people don't actually want to spend it. They just want to hold it. And this is actually bad. Okay. So how should you guys think about inflation? The general idea, or the way that you should think about inflation, is actually as a tax. So inflation is sort of a tax on the token holders of a system. So if you have everyone's holding Bitcoin and you print Bitcoin, which they do, they have a mining reward every 10 minutes. This is actually a tax on all the token holders. So all of the token holders are devaluing themselves proportionally in order to pay this mining reward. And this is a really important concept to get, that inflation is a tax on holding money. A lot of like Austrian or libertarian economists will say that this is a really bad thing because it's devaluing your property, but it's not, because in a lot of ways, the currency is created by the society, and sometimes the token holders should be the ones paying for it. So if you think about it in the idea of Bitcoin, the token holders, if it's a store of value cryptocurrency, if the use case of Bitcoin is you put money into Bitcoin and you're storing your value, who should pay the fee for storing value? Should it be the people who are sending it? not really. It should be the people who are storing the value, using it for what it's made to be. So they should be the ones paying the tax. That makes sense. In a similar way, you can also use inflation as a tax for common goods. So, if you have, say, like government organizations that help everyone, whether it's healthcare or building roads, printing money to do these things is actually, it's an okay way to go, because, roads, for instance, it's generally been hard to say the ideal way is you tax the people who are driving on the road. But sometimes that's not necessarily feasible. So if you use inflation within your currency, now you sort of tax everyone in your economy based upon how much money they hold. And it can be maybe a better or more equitable way to go than more specific taxation. Okay. So supply growth. So this is kind of the big concept that I want you guys to understand. It's how do you grow your token supply? How do you use this inflationary reward, as we call it, so printing money for behavior modification? So the idea with Tellor, for instance, Tellor, we print money every block, similar to Bitcoin, and we use that money to pay for security. So we are actually bootstrapping security in our system. The miners would probably not mind very much if it was just for fees, because we don't really have many people tipping in the Tellor system at the moment. I mean, there's some very, very small amounts, but it would be very easy to break at that point because nobody is actually doing it. Same with Bitcoin, especially in the early days of Bitcoin. The block reward, and even in 2013 was, a few percentage points. So the fees weren't very high. People were mining these and providing the security to Bitcoin for that block reward. So the security of Bitcoin came from this money, and by using that freshly printed money, then you can sort of bootstrap security in your system by A, taxing holders, and B, allowing people to sort of speculate on future gains. So you can also think about, other ones where you have inflation for behavior modification, like all of DeFi is doing this right now. So like liquidity mining. If you lock your tokens up in this Uniswap pool or in this yield farming pool, we'll print you tokens. We're going to give you a reward for doing this. And that's an important concept. And now we're going to talk about how it sort of differs from current monetary system. So for those, this is going to be a very simplified version of how our current monetary system works. The current monetary system is actually a debt-based money system. So what this actually means is we only print new money whenever new debt is created. So this is the tale of the 11th round is my favorite story on how our money system works. So you can think about a newcomer, so a traveler, he goes to an island and he sees people trading chickens for cows, for shoes, and they had no money. It was just a barter economy. And he said, this is so inefficient. We can do better than this. So he prints some paper and he creates, he cuts out some little paper rounds and he writes, he makes paper notes and he gives them to everyone. And he gives these 10 people 10 rounds each. And he says, here, use these as money. Now you can trade these and you don't need to trade chickens for cows, or it was just way too inefficient. And they're all like, okay, this sounds like a really good idea. And what's the catch? And he said, well, since I'm making your whole lives better, all of you who are in the system, you all have to pay me back 10%, just as a reward. So you have to pay me back 11 rounds. So the 10 of you each get 10 rounds and you each have to pay me back 11 rounds. And now if you're paying attention, the problem with this is that if 10 people are going to be paying back 11 rounds, there's actually not that much money in circulation. So how do you do it? The ways that you would actually do it is you either need somebody else to come in and borrow more from him. So you would need to increase the level of debt in the economy. This is why our current system is always just geared towards growth. It has to grow. Or the other way is, let's say the last guy, let's say he goes bankrupt and his 10 rounds are distributed amongst the other people. Now they can all pay it back. So what it does is it leads to competition, and it leads to kind of perpetual growth and perpetual rising levels of debt, which we've seen in basically every economy that's taken this out. And it's good in a way. So if the whole goal of your economy is growth, this is really good. But if the goal of your economy is that you guys aren't always at each other's throats trying to pay off debt, it's not good. In fact, it leads to some big time issues. So that's what we're gonna talk about. How can we actually do things better? And so the US dollar is sort of a debt-based system, but Bitcoin in the same sense. So how does Bitcoin print money? It's a security-based system. The newly printed money goes to pay for security. And that's what they incentivize, and that's what you get a whole lot of in Bitcoin. We all, as in Tellor, we also use money for a dev share. So we pay for development with newly printed money. You can do a lot of different things with it. The general idea is that what are you rewarding in your system? So if you're rewarding something more, you get more of it. If you're taxing something, you get less of it. So if you think about the inflationary rewards, if you tax holding, you're going to get less holding and hopefully more spending, which is good. If you want a high velocity, or if you're subsidizing it, you get more of it. So I think Brenda pointed out when she saw this graph, she thought of like cigarettes. If you tax cigarettes, you get less of them. Or you could do things like subsidize healthy things. So you could subsidize gym memberships or subsidize, exercising or something, and then you'll get more of it. And both are different ways to get kind of the same goal of people being healthier. And that's what we're playing around with here in crypto land, or how do we tweak all of these different inflationary variables to get people to do what we want them to do. Okay, so here's a nice little funny ETH meme for you. But now what we're going to talk about is how do you sort of properly reward people? So, Bitcoin, you want to pay for security, and you use these inflationary rewards to pay for security. But people in general, whoever gets those first newly printed Bitcoins or newly printed money, in the case of a debt-based economy, those people are better off than the people who get it later down the line when the price adjusts. That's actually why people are generally against, say, pre-mines. Pre-mines, if you think about it from like a seniorage basis, you get this gigantic piece of money right at the beginning. So it's not like inflationary towards anything. It's just inflation right at the beginning for the team to sell off and have an initial piece. And there's nothing wrong with pre-mines. Like Tellor had no pre-mine, and we're very proud of that fact. But it's usually the big problem with pre-mines is actually just if you own 70% of your cryptocurrency and you have any sort of governance model, you can't be decentralized. So it's really hard to be decentralized when you own the vast majority of your currency. That's kind of the big problem with pre-mines. But as we've seen in like Ethereum, after you get rid of it and you sell it all off, it can be sort of fine. And a lot of times pre-mines can even be more fair. So if you think about it in terms of the Bitcoin piece, a lot of the early Bitcoin devs actually weren't miners. So whether they were actually writing the original Bitcoin code or running some of the original wallets or nodes, they weren't miners themselves. So despite the fact that they were Bitcoin OGs, they actually didn't have that much Bitcoin. Whereas the few kids who got in super early and ran a Bitcoin miner on their CPU, they became overnight millionaires. So is it fair that a kid who ran a Bitcoin miner is a millionaire and a Bitcoin core dev didn't get anything? Probably not. So maybe a small pre-mine would have been okay for them. I don't know. Different ways to look at it, but it's really hard. But one of the best things about proof of work, so this was one of the big reasons Tellor actually chose proof of work, is you don't have seigniorage. So the idea is that whenever you have these hyper-competitive proof of work environments, you actually get coins at cost. So people are going to be willing to put in the hash power to mine Tellor tokens or to mine Bitcoin, and they're not making an exorbitant profit off of it. So it's not like you have some privileged group of people that gets those tokens. So stay like, this is the problem with staking. So like if we, for instance, started with staking, if we launched last year, we would be the only people with tokens, and we would get 100% of the reward since we would be the only people who staked originally, and then we could just sell you guys the reward, and you guys would maybe be able to keep staking after that. That's the problem with staking. With proof of work, though, anybody can compete, and you would expect that the difficulty would go up to a point that you don't get a really large seigniorage cut. Basically, it's risk adjusted to be relatively, What's the thing? Marginal revenue equals marginal cost, or marginal revenue equals zero at some point, where you just aren't increasing at some point. Anyway, now for kind of the last exercise here. What we're going to do is we're going to design, how would we design Bitcoin if you actually had no inflation? So like if you wanted to build Bitcoin, but you didn't want to have inflation. The general idea is that actually users would have to pay for the transaction fees. So now the vast majority of Bitcoin security, as I pointed out earlier, is paid for by the mining reward. So you're taxing token holders and you're building it with the mining reward. If you wanted users to pay for it, what would that look like? Well, if you don't have any inflation in your system, you actually have to have a large pre-mine. It's just kind of the way it is. You need some tokens in circulation. So say you gave Satoshi and Mike Hearn and Gavin and all those early guys, you just passed them all some tokens, and then they would have to pay a fee to send it to somebody else and hope that somebody mining it would be willing to do the work for the fee. The problem is that it probably would have never gotten off the ground. The fact that people could run software and they could earn Bitcoin for doing this was actually miners, similar to Tellor's ecosystem. Miners are a big part of how Bitcoin grew. You got people to do something and provide security, and they got rewarded with this thing. So if it was just this small currency that people had to, you had to interact with Satoshi in order to get one, well, nobody's really paying these large fees, and especially at the beginning of Bitcoin, there's not that many transactions, so there's really going to be no security. There's no point in wasting the CPU power on your machine for a few pennies every day, and that's kind of the difference. That's where by printing money, what you do is you bootstrap a security because people are willing to mine for this, but then what you also bootstrap is users, because now people who are willing to come and work for those Bitcoin, or in our case for those TRB, now they have your currency. Now they want to spend it. Now they want to get exchange listings to sell it. Now they want to find users to sell it to, and it creates sort of this whole ecosystem that actually didn't exist. So Bitcoin, it's literally just printing things out of nowhere, but due to the fact that people think in the future they'll be able to spend it somewhere, or in the future people will slowly start holding it more and more, then you get people, and almost the more hopes and dreams that you have built into this thing, the more it makes sense, and then it actually does start holding real value. So this is, for those of you that have been following Bitcoin at some point, since the block reward halves, the block reward is slowly going away. Bitcoin has a fixed supply, and at some point what they hope is that the fees go high enough to replace the block reward. And will that happen? Maybe. we don't know. It's sort of too early to say, and a lot of people have speculated that there's a lot of security issues with Bitcoin if that is the case. So we'll see. But this kind of comes to my last point. A lot of people are going to talk about, why do you need a token in your system? So, a lot of people, I was talking earlier on about tokenomics and how awful of a term it is, because, everybody wants like, well, what we're going to do is, you have to have some sort of return to token holders, and you have to have, it has to be sort of like equity in a governance sense. And it doesn't. It doesn't in any way, shape, or form. Just saying it's like, listen, we're going to reward early users, and there's going to be a functionality that we build in for this one. And if you think it's going to go up in value, you'll do something for this coin. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to bootstrap something. So the fact that, Tellor is bootstrapping security, we don't really have that many users now. And especially when we launched a year ago, we had none. And in order to get any sort of security for users to trust, we had to mint some TRB tokens, and then speculators came on board, and it was this whole beautiful thing that sort of came about from nothing. So there's nothing backing Tellor. There's not like gold in a vault or anything like that. It's just the idea that eventually people think that it's going to be used, and then miners come on board and start providing security. And then now that they're providing security, there actually is a system with some security, and then it's worth something. So in that way, you're able to, as soon as you add a token to your system, you can bootstrap some things. DeFi is starting to figure this out. They can bootstrap liquidity. I have my own thoughts on whether or not bootstrapping liquidity is an awesome thing to do, but you can do it, and it's a way to get usage. The whole general idea is that eventually at some point you want the inflation to go down, you want actual usage, and that's what we're working on here at Tellor. Maybe you do transition to it being a governance token of some sort, but especially at the beginning, you can just having a token to have people speculate on it and get things done and try and create or bootstrap value is a very positive way to go. So anyway, that's actually it for the talk. It actually went a whole lot faster than I thought it would. So I'm gonna stop, and then I can answer any questions you guys might have. So, all right. Thanks everyone for coming, first of all. We'll be here next week. We're gonna be doing a core chat. Thanks for everyone who's doing some hard things. Somebody said congrats on Huobi in the chat. Thank you. And yeah, it's been a really exciting week, and especially last 2 weeks. So thanks everyone, and I will talk to you guys all. Oh, never mind. We're getting some questions. Yeah. Does the 10% dev fee you have an end date? All right. So this is actually semi-related to the inflationary rewards. So the 10% dev fee does not have an end date, but it can. So Tellor right now, if you guys know, Tellor actually does have an admin key right now. And we're going to be throwing it away after V2 at some point. And then it goes to upgrade the contracts. You need 10% of the token supply as a yes or a no. And you can fork us out at any point. So, we hope, I think like that's going to be an awesome time, like to see if you guys don't feel like we're adding value, you can kick us out. So we definitely want to make sure that we're adding value for the TRB ecosystem. Somebody asked, any thoughts about Genesis wallet buying TRB? I have no idea what you're talking about, to be honest. So if anybody wants to clue me in, send me a message on Telegram or something. So somebody asked, what's your thoughts about BTC this week? Yeah, I mean, it's going up, right? That's the fun. It's fun. Cool. And somebody said the ETH Genesis wallet is buying up TRB, which is awesome to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, there were always rumors. Anytime, like, we haven't been doing it, but anytime you see just a wallet that starts accumulating a token, you never know who put it there. So like, there was like one VC, I think, like Andreessen, the A16Z wallet, like people knew which that one was, and then like synthetics started going into the A16Z wallet, and then it pumped really big because people were like, oh, they're going to announce they invest in synthetics, and then A16Z never announced they invested in synthetics, I don't think. And it was one of those like weird, like did the team just send them some free synthetics tokens to spike it up? Yeah. Anyway, Zelantis asked, any thoughts about how the Oracle space can evolve from a technology standpoint? I think the big thing with the Oracle space in general is we're sort of beholden in a lot of ways to the base layer chains. Tellor can become so much more secure and so much better with faster chains. So, actual once ETH 2.0 launches, or if Tellor moves to kind of different chains, it's kind of a whole different ball game as far as what we can do and what we can build. Because like right now, even so, Tellor functioning even with our very, very limited throughput, it's so expensive on Ethereum. It's the gas costs have just been crazy. So having the ability to get away from that and push more data to chain and things are going to be awesome. Somebody asked, what's the main topic at the Defining DeFi series? I'm going to talk about this. It's going to be very similar to this talk. And then somebody says, if you were designing Tellor today, what would you change? So, I mean, we're doing a V2 upgrade. We have some V3 upgrades, some things in mind. But it's still like early research. I don't think we would change much. We really want to keep it simple as much as possible, because the simpler you can kind of keep things that actually work, the more people understand it and the easier it is for them to use. Because especially in kind of the Ethereum space, there's a lot of these like ZK snark wallets and side chains and everything like that, but nobody's using them. Nobody's using them. The big things that people are using are just super, super simple pieces. And that's, whether it's Uniswap, whether it's, even Maker at this point is something people can kind of understand. And there's not like any technological revelations in what Maker's doing. So somebody asked, what's best case scenario where Tellor is in 5 years from today? Oh man, I mean, that's so long. Like if Tellor has a positive, like, 5 years ago, like Ethereum was just a baby. So we're hoping that we can be around and we can be one of the big players in the space providing value, no matter what chain or where we're at. It's, it's so long. Somebody asked, how will you manage security if we move to proof of stake? Tellor security doesn't change too much. Proof of work, proof of stake. The proof of work piece mainly adds a much better token distribution model. And then it adds a little bit of redundancy as far as the people who do proof of work aren't the same people who vote on the disputes. So we're going to have to kind of work out some of those pieces and figure out how best to manage the different people and make sure that it's not the same person who can just throw both of them. So yeah, hopefully that's it. And somebody, last question. Okay, 5 years from now is forever. What about 1 year? In 1 year from now, I want to have a bunch of projects who are using us, and I want all of you guys to be using them. And that way, we really get the ecosystem building. We have a derivatives platform we like. We have a stable coin we like. We have a currency we like. We're out there pushing people to use products that use Tellor, like expanding the crypto use beyond just the crypto Twitter bubble. That's where I want to be in a year, having like those futuristic use cases that we're building upon. But yeah, thanks everyone. I will talk to you all next week. Happy to answer questions on Telegram too. See you.